Welcome to my talk on open science and data protection. My name is Heilbronner, and I work at the University Hospital in Munich, and I do research on psychiatric genetics. And as you know, psychiatric genetics is a very data-intensive subject. And so I want to use this talk to sensitize you a little bit to the issues we may have when we want to share our research data. And on the next slide, you kind of see the 6 pillars of open science, starting with open science, going to open educational resources. And I just want to make it clear that what we talk about today will mostly be about open data. Yeah? And if you look a little bit further on the internet, you can find the following information, the following definition of open data. Namely, open data and content can be freely used, modified, and shared by anyone for any purpose. So this is a very liberal definition that is in the spirit of free software and has basically no restrictions at all. But if we do clinical research, we have the ethical duty and oftentimes also the legal obligation to take care that the privacy of our research subjects is respected, and that everything that is done with the data is done in a fair way. And this, as you can probably see, conflicts with the idea of totally open data. And the next slide that I have for you is a literature reference, basically. And this paper deals with the social, legal, and ethical implications of open science, and especially with respect to the European General Data Protection Regulation. And for anybody who is interested in this topic, this is a very good article, and I would recommend you to read it. On the next slide, I have another literature reference for you from Water Resources Research. And the title basically says it all, Balancing Open Science and Data Privacy in the Water Sciences. And of course, this does not only hold for water sciences, but for a lot of different disciplines in which human data is used. And the first of their key points is natural scientists have little guidance to deal with privacy concerns for open science, which are inherent in socio-environmental research. And the last point, last key point that they have is that scientists should continue to share data openly while proactively addressing privacy concerns via ethical data management and data sharing. And this is also a very interesting paper that details some of the problems and also some of the solutions that we face if we want to share data. And I have now, on the next slide here, made a few examples of data which I consider problematic if you want to put them up on a server and have them to be openly downloaded by everybody. And so, number one, this would be individual level genomic data, for example, from a genome-wide association study, because these data are essentially fingerprints. And anybody who has, for example, other genetic data or a subset of data could use these data to match them up and to identify the individual in question. The same holds true if you consider high-dimensional phenotype data. in which you essentially have the same problem. So if you have a lot of information on somebody, it will be much easier to match this up with, for example, publicly available information. The next point here on my list is that you should not openly, at least not downloadable on the internet, share kind of internal pseudonyms, so-called identifiers that then link to a natural identity of a person, because these are also considered to be very sensitive information. But I do not only want to state problems in my talk, I also want to give you some examples of solutions. And some solutions to the problems I've just mentioned is that you, in genome-wide associational studies, you can essentially share summary statistics, which are aggregated over individuals and usually do not are not problematic to put on a website to download for everybody. And this is also great information for anybody doing a study on himself. So this is not problematic. You can also anonymize your data, and I will talk about this in a second, because you have to truly anonymize the data so that nobody can identify your research subjects. But if you do it, it is not a problem. And what is another solution is personal accountability. So you can basically say, okay, this information is not freely available on the web, but you can write me an email and we can agree, we can sign some documents for what you are using these data, and then basically you can have the data, and you can be completely open in this way. This is also another possibility. I was just talking about anonymization of data, and I just wanted to mention that there are softwares that help you to anonymize your data. And I have not used this software, but I have put up this slide because this slide actually illustrates very nicely what I've been telling on earlier. So basically, if you have an anonymized data set here, anonymized medical data, and this data contains also the zip code, for example, of the place of living of the individuals, the birth date, and the gender, then this information can be used to match up this information with publicly available information. For example, in the United States, there is a public voters registry. And this is actually the dangers that you have, and this software essentially can help you to anonymize your data, to truly anonymize your data, which is very good. So I have some more advice for people that are planning a study. So 3 very important points are that first, when you plan the study, you should seek counseling by the local data protection officers. And these are experts on data protection, and they can really help you to identify the laws and that you have to follow, and to make sure that you do everything correctly. Another point that is worth mentioning, I think, is that you should pay particular attention to the informed consent that your research subjects are signing, because basically what you put in your informed consent really limits the purpose and how you can use their data. So you should pay real attention here. The last point is maybe a bit trivial, but I would really recommend you to work with the medical informatics department, because they are really, or a statistics department, because they are really the experts and can often and can give you IT tools at hand with which you can easily manage your data and identifying information of your research subjects. So, and in the remainder of the talk, I would like you to show how we on our in our research institute do open science, because we are, since several years, we are conducting a longitudinal study of severe mental disorders. And our research participants, they sign a relatively broad consent so that we can use this data to investigate a lot of different research subjects. And we have a focus on genomics and other biological data, and also collect a lot of phenotype information. And in the last few slides, I would like to show you how we do open science. So number one, the data should be findable. And to ensure this, we have published the metadata of our study. And if you go to this URL down here, you can actually see the metadata that we assess in the study and everything that is available, and how the variables are named, what is specifically assessed. So this is all open and public information. We also hope to get a persistent digital object identifier soon. So the data is findable. It is also accessible because, as I said, we do not, it's not possible to put it freely downloadable on the web, but you can put in a research proposal with us. And on the website, it is clearly explained the steps you have to take to submit such a research proposal, and this will be reviewed shortly. And if there is no obvious problem, we will give you the data, and you can do the research stated in your proposal with our data. Yeah? So I think the data is relatively accessible. And last but not least, the data is also interoperable. We have different formats of the data set available. Wide and long format data sets for the R software, that is the quasi-standard, I think, nowadays in data analysis, but you can also get the data, of course, as a text file and read it into whichever software you would like. Yeah? And also, what I said before, the study data is reusable. So you can, if you're a researcher and would like to use the data, you can just simply write a proposal to us, and you will get the data and can do your research. And so now I am at the end of my brief talk on data protection. I hope that you kind of took something from it and that you can use the resources that I gave you. And I would like to say thank you. And this is my email address. If you have specific comments or questions, you can, of course, email me. Thank you very much. Goodbye.